First of all, we just want to thank you for coming out tonight for this special night. We've got a special speaker, so I just want to introduce him. Jack Taylor is a native of Black River Falls, Wisconsin. He attended the Black River Falls High School, where he's the basketball program's second all-time leading scorer. Upon graduation, he attended a prep school in Pennsylvania with hopes of earning an NCAA Division I basketball scholarship. However, those plans changed when he suffered a knee injury that required surgery. He then enrolled at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse, where he played for one season before transferring to Grinnell College, a highly respected academic school located in central Iowa. This school also features a high-flying, fast-paced basketball team that has led the nation in scoring 18 of the last 20 years. In just his third game playing for the Pioneers on November 20th, 2012, Jack changed college basketball forever when he scored 138 points in a game. It's not very many. I can't do that. No, that's really impressive. Really impressive. But as much as basketball means to Jack, I can tell you just from the time of having him just tonight at dinner, his Christian faith is much more important. You're going to really be blessed by what Jack has to share with you. He's a biological chemistry major, and he plans to be a pharmacist someday. Give it up for Jack Taylor.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. This is a cool church you guys have here. I think you guys are really blessed to have all these resources around you. I just came today to kind of share with you my story, I guess. The walk that God has had me on, and hopefully you guys can maybe be blessed by something I say, because I can relate to a lot of you. And so when I was your guys' age, whether it be middle school or high school, I wasn't a believer. I wasn't a Christian. I called myself a Christian. I went to church every Sunday. I was in the Lutheran church growing up, and I was confirmed and went through, everything that I was supposed to go through. And, I called myself a Christian, but I later realized that, I really wasn't living for God in light of what Jesus has done for me. I was really living for the game of basketball. It's something I love, and it's not bad to love a sport, but that was my God. I loved basketball more than I loved Jesus. And I wouldn't admit it to you guys at the time, but that was the reality. And I grew up loving basketball, playing basketball, eating and sleeping the game, as many of you can probably attest to with whatever sport you guys are in or activity you guys are in. And I was a good high school player. I was all-state in Wisconsin and led the state in scoring as a junior, and I did get a Division I scholarship, and that's what I really wanted to do. And I hadn't attained a Division I scholarship. I had some schools, Ivy League schools, interested, and so I went out to Pennsylvania for a year, and that's when this whole journey with Jesus started. I went there to get a basketball scholarship, and I was playing out there. I was playing well. Coaches were coming to see me play, and I was playing really well. The competition out on the East Coast in high school basketball is a lot better than kind of the farm country in Wisconsin, and I was actually faring pretty well. And then our first conference game with coaches there, I ended up tearing my ACL in a game, and that really shook me. And I just remember, almost being mad at God. Like, why would you take this game away from me? Something that you've given me a passion for, and then you're going to take it away. So I had a little bit of bitterness towards God at that time, which was really sinful. But that was the reality of the situation, and I can look back at it now, and basketball is the thing that I worshipped at that time. You can worship things in this world besides Jesus, and at that time, that's what I was worshiping. So I was bitter. I mean, when someone takes away your God, it's something that you it wasn't easy. And I had to kind of go through the emotional battle of realizing that, the college coaches weren't going to come knocking at my door anymore. I tore my ACL, my lateral meniscus, and partially tore my MCL. So it was a pretty devastating knee injury. And it was at that point when one of my friends, who I had built a relationship with, who was on the football team, said one of the most loving things anyone has ever said to me. And it was hard at the time, but looking back, it was the most loving, honest thing anyone's ever said to me. He came up to me and he's like, Jack, I've been friends with you now for a couple months. I've seen the way you live, kind of the way you think, and I've seen your life, and I don't think you're a Christian. And that really shook me to the core. And he asked me, why do you think you're a Christian? And I was like, well, I think I'm a pretty good person. He said, why do you think you're going to heaven? I was like, well, I try to do my best. I think I'm a pretty good person. And, at the time I thought, maybe good people went to heaven and bad people went to hell. And compared to others around me, I judged myself as better than them. What I didn't realize at the time was that I wasn't going to be able to judge myself. That God was going to judge us. And it didn't matter what I thought of myself. It didn't matter what God thought. And so, in combination with basketball being taken away and one of my best friends telling me that he didn't think I was a Christian, I was pretty lost because my faith was shaken and my basketball career was shaken. And that's when I really started to try to seek what was most important in my life. Because I realized I was living for a game, a sport. And that was pretty shallow. And it's at that time that I started listening to some YouTube sermons. It was a famous pastor in Seattle named Mark Driscoll. He really shared the gospel with me, that Jesus, died for my sins, and that I'm not going to heaven based on what I do, but I can go to heaven because of what he did on the cross for me. So I really realized that at that moment that, God really does love me. I didn't really know that before. I kind of tried to use God to maybe help me in basketball. I remember sitting in your guys' chairs, your age, saying, God, please make me taller. As you guys can see, I'm like 5'9", barely pushing 5'10". And I just remember that. So God was kind of there for me, for my own selfish desires. And so I started to see how sinful I really was and how much I needed the grace of God. And at that time, the gospel was presented to me really online, watching YouTube. And I know maybe it's not a conventional way of coming to Jesus or hearing the gospel, but I realized that, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't have fruit in my life. I didn't trust in God and His Word and act on it. Because now I realize that it's not enough for you guys just to believe in God. It's not enough. You ask the demons if they believe in God. Yeah, they believe in God. So it's not enough. And it's also not enough to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. You ask a demon that, they'll say, yeah, Jesus rose from the dead. But it's about trusting in Him. Trusting in His Word. And repenting and turning from your sin. And so at the time when I was a non-Christian, I would go to church on Sunday and worship God. But then all the other days of the week, I would worship my other God, which was basketball. I would worship my other God, which was popularity. And I really didn't care what Jesus had said about how to live. I didn't trust Him. But I realized that, God does love me because He died on the cross for me. And that really changed my life. Feeling the love of God, because He loves me more than anyone has ever loved me before. And in light of that love, I started trusting in Him. I had a girlfriend who I was fornicating with, and God really shook me to the core and said, "You know what? That's wrong." And I knew it was wrong before, but I didn't trust in His word. And now that I know the love of God, I'm trusting in His word. That it's not easy. So when you're sitting in your seats, my challenge to you today is, are you trusting in God? What He says in the Bible, do you really trust Him? Because it's not enough to just believe that God exists or that Jesus is God and He rose from the dead, but it's about trusting in Him, believing in Him, and repenting from your sin. And, God was able to work through my heart, and, I was so concerned about popularity in high school that I started drinking. I started hanging out with the party crowd, and after, I realized that God really, truly does love me. And if He loves me this much, and He's created me, He probably knows what makes me happy. God has the owner's manual for our lives. He made us. He knows what makes us happy. And so when we chase things outside of His word, like finding our sense of worth in basketball, popularity, or in my case, in a girlfriend, or partying, it's not going to fulfill us. And so, in addition to that, scoring 138 points, that's, maybe the ultimate dream of every athlete, is to get, a world record where everyone sees you on ESPN and SportsCenter. Yes, it feels good as a gift from God, but I can honestly tell you that it doesn't fulfill me. So whatever you guys are chasing outside of God to find fulfillment, I can personally testify that it doesn't fulfill me. As much as people might think it does, success in a sport won't fulfill you. But I've been able to use basketball as a platform to share with you guys some of my faith. I've spoken at some other churches, and He's really allowed me to be humble throughout this whole process, because it's really easy to start putting eyes on myself once you have an NCAA record, and wanting people to kind of worship you. But I've truly been born again, and I'm kind of new to this whole Christian thing. I was saved about 3 years ago, and so I wasn't as fortunate as you guys to grow up in a loving church with maybe parents who really love Jesus. So I think you guys are really blessed to have a church like this, to maybe have parents like you have who really do love Jesus. And so my challenge to you today is to examine yourself, examine your faith. Paul calls us in the New Testament to continually examine ourselves to see if we are in the faith. And he does that because it's really easy to assume. It's easy to assume that we're Christian, to ease our conscience when there's no evidence of it in our lives. And my friend challenged me when I was out in Pennsylvania, and that made me realize how much I needed God's grace. And so that's my challenge to you guys today. Is, are you trusting in Him? Or are you going with the crowd? Are you trying to be popular? Are you trying to find success in sports or in life over your relationship with Jesus? Because it's not a sin to chase success. It's a sin to try to find fulfillment apart from God. Because it won't fulfill you. And so my challenge to you today is, are you in the faith? And if you're not, we have really, really good news because we know that God loves us. If you're not in the faith, if you realize that maybe today that, maybe I'm really not trusting in God. Because it's going to show, You might kind of have your borrow your parents' faith right now, but when college comes, the temptation comes. Everyone is partying. Everyone is sinful, doing sinful acts. And that's when it's going to show that, I can't borrow my parents' faith any longer. I have to start putting my own trust in Jesus. So that's my challenge to you guys today. And if you realize that maybe you're not trusting in Jesus, and there's no fruit in your life or evidence in your life that you truly are a disciple of Jesus Christ, we still have hope, because it's not about what we do that make us Christian. It's about what Jesus did. And all we have to do is trust in him. And I think it was a pivotal point in my life where I said, okay, did Jesus really rise from the dead? Because for me, that's the biggest fact, the most important fact in the world, is if Jesus rose from the dead. Because if he did, that means everything he said is true. And if everything he said is true, that gives us great hope. Because we realize it's not up to us whether we're saved or not. It's up to Jesus. He died on the cross for us in demonstration of his love for us. And all we have to do is turn to him. We don't have to do anything. You don't have to go try hard. You don't have to go, it's not about what you do, it's really about what he did. And so I think one of the best, the most beneficial things that I've done as a Christian to grow is really to go on YouTube. To be honest with you, is to go on YouTube and you're going to want to find, biblical, solid, theological pastors, and take notes on their sermons. It's an hour long, but take notes on their sermons. Because they're great communicators. They're some of the best communicators in the world. And so, who has phones in here? Can everyone grab their phone right now? Whether you have to take a note or send a text to yourself or just save it in a message draft, I want you to type these names in. I want you to type in Francis Chan. After that, I want you to type in Mark Driscoll. After that, I want you to type in Paul Washer. And save it to your drafts. So for me, in my walk with Jesus, watching these guys on YouTube is giving me great hope, because they share the gospel in such a hopeful way that makes me want to follow Jesus. A lot of the time it's like, do I really have to do this or stop doing this thing? Well, it makes me, I want to do that because God loves me and I love him. It's just changed my relationship. So I really want to challenge you guys today to go do that, to go take notes, buy a notebook, have sermon notes, and do it once a week if you want. If you want to do it more, go ahead. But it's been great for me. And so I want to thank you guys for having me. I know I'm not the best speaker, but these guys who I've pointed you to, can really communicate the gospel in a way that I can't. And so I just want to thank you guys for having me. And whatever questions you guys have, I'm down to answer. Let's take Jack. The post-game question and answer, so we're going to have a little bit of that for a little bit, so you guys can ask some questions. There should be another mic somewhere. Mammy's got it. She'll walk around, raise your hand if you got a question for Jack, and then he will answer them.
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color? I'd have to say probably black. I'm restoring an old Mustang, 67 Mustang with my dad, and we painted it black.
The 6th to 8th graders the last couple weeks have been studying sports and Christianity. Can you tell us what you think about kind of that idea, how sports and Christianity relate?
Yeah, that's actually kind of been a struggle for me. Especially when I first became a Christian. But I think we have to realize that sports don't give us more character. We have to realize that sports don't build character in itself. Otherwise, that would mean that people who are the most experienced or who are the best at sports have the most character. And if you guys watch the NBA, watch the NFL, we know that's not true. We know that the highest paid athletes in the world don't have the most character. So what I have to do is consciously be aware that sports can teach you a lot in life. For me, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm starting to think about marriage. I'm starting to think about witnessing to my future sons and daughters when they ask me, what were you like in college, Dad? I can't lie to them. And so I want to build a good testimony for my future kids. And so I can do that through sports. And so for me, I can kind of relate it to, in terms of hard work, if you're not going to work hard in sports, are you going to work hard to feed your family? Are you going to work hard to disciple your family, pastor your family? In addition to that, are you going to be selfish in sports? Or are you going to be unselfish and willing to be a team player? Because in life, these are lessons that you can carry over from sports. So I found it that you can learn a lot of lessons in sports, but it doesn't matter if you don't apply those to the way you're living. You can be the hardest working football player out there, but if you don't work hard in school, it doesn't matter. So you have to be able to apply what you learn in sports to the real world.
Jack, can you tell us about the night that you scored 138 points and what was going through your mind, and then maybe how you dealt with the press, both positive and negative press afterwards?
Yeah. So coming into the big game, I was shooting just really poorly. We had an opening tournament, and I think I shot around 16% in the first 2 games. So I just shot awful. And the coaches wanted to get me out of a slump. So they said, you know what, we're going to give you the first 10 minutes of the game to shoot as many times as you want. And if you're hot, we're gonna keep with the game plan. We're just going to keep rolling. And so after the first 10 minutes of play, I think I had around 23 points, and we just kept the ball rolling. I mean, my teammates kept feeding me the ball, and I had 58 at halftime, and I actually wasn't shooting that well. I was just shooting a lot. And come the second half, I finally broke out of that shooting slump. There was a point in the second half, right before I came out of the game, where I hit 7 threes in a row in the span of like a minute and 40 seconds. And that's when I kind of broke out of my slump. And really, it carried me the rest of the season until my injury, where, I stayed hot throughout the season. And so that game was just really exciting for me because, I not only set a record, but I was able to kind of get out of my slump right before we get into conference play. And so I was able to stay hot and stay confident because I figured if no one's ever scored that many points, no one in the conference is going to be able to guard me. And that's the confidence that I had going into the season.
In that game, did anybody else score on your team?
Yeah.
What's the final score?
figures. Because I was a triple figures.
What was the total of the whole game?
The total score?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 179, which was a school record, and the other team 104.
What are you doing now?
What's,
What are you doing now, like after the season?
yeah, actually, my season ended with a wrist injury. I should probably tell you guys about that too. As you heard, my ACL injury, I was really shaken up because, really didn't trust in God's plan for my life because He was taking away my basketball scholarship, and I just didn't trust what He was doing was right. And so it was really hard. And this season, it was about midway through the season. I was playing a conference game and came down. I got hit on a layup and came down and broke my wrist. And that ended my season. My kind of all my individual goals for the season, which was to lead the country in scoring, just fell off because you have a certain minimum of games you have to play. So, I didn't lead the nation in scoring this year, and that was one of my goals. And so it was hard, but God's brought me so far and so close to Him, and I've trusted in God so much that now my wrist injury didn't really affect me emotionally like my knee injury. We had a chance to win conference and go to the NCAA tournament, and we weren't able to accomplish either of those. But I was just really able to trust in God. If this is God's plan, He loves me. He knows what He's doing. And so I was able to really keep my trust in God, and I really wasn't that devastated. But now I'm training again, finally, and I have 2 seasons left at Grinnell, and my hope is to lead the nation in scoring next year. And I've been talking to our coaches too, and I think we're going to try to see if I can break the most points that's ever been averaged in a college basketball season, which Pistol Pete Maravich has. I don't know if any of you youngins know who that is. He averaged 44 a game at LSU. So that's a tall task, but I'll be training for it.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Who's your favorite team?
My favorite team. I've always admired the passion and the determination to get better of Kobe Bryant. He definitely doesn't have the most character as a human being, but his drive to get better is something that I can definitely relate to.
How'd you start in basketball or get started in basketball?
Yeah, I think it really started because I had 3 sisters, no brothers. So that was hard. They were off playing Barbies. I played every once in a while. I was really on my own a lot. And so, with basketball is a game where all you need is a ball and a hoop and yourself. That's all you need. With other sports, you're going to need all this equipment and other people. Basketball was really kind of my sanctuary where I could get away and just, be creative. Imagine I was in the NBA scoring, and it was just a real getaway for me that gave me a lot of happiness.
If you were to get a scholarship offer from like a Duke or North Carolina, would you ever leave Grinnell for one of those 2 schools?
With transfer rules, I would only have 1 year left to play. Where at Grinnell, I'd have 2. But if I was offered that, I'd probably be dumb not to take it. But I don't think I'm at the Division I level where they would do that. But it would be fun, yeah.
Are you going to grad school?
Yeah, my plan actually, is, God willing, that I can play professional basketball overseas. Our basketball program has a lot of contacts in Italy, and so, for 2, 3, or 4 years, I could go play professionally overseas for a few years, and then my plan is to come back and kind of fall back on my education and go to grad school to either be a pharmacist or a doctor.
Okay, one more question. Anyone else besides Maddie, because you've already answered?
What's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is a squirrel.
Okay, Jack, thank you so much. The rest of the night, what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to get a picture with all the youth in the room with Jack in just a few moments. But after that, Jack is going to be back at the table where Johnny, put your hand up high. See Johnny, say hi, Johnny. So after we're done with the picture, Jack's going to be back there so he has pictures to sign for autographs. So you can go back and visit there and talk with him and ask him more questions. But let's thank Jack again so much.